may I say? Yeah. Great panel tonight. Couldn't really put together a better panel for this, I don't think. We got Jamie Anderson, Steve Thomas, Vince Alm, and Nigel Blues. Loads to talk about. I suppose we'll come on to the Norwich game in a little bit more detail, although it was kind of, in a way, by the by, as it turned out, really, in terms of where we finished, obviously. But I suppose the first question is, I'll just spin around on this, and you may have the same opinions. I'll go to Vince first, yeah. What went wrong, Vince?
No plan. We as a club, we haven't had a plan. Well, we haven't had a plan for a number of years. Certainly during Vincent Tan's reign, we've never had a plan. And if you don't plan, you've got nothing to gauge against. You don't improve. If you're doing things wrong, you change things to make them better. We never do. We haven't done that. We've carried on doing the same thing. We kept changing managers. Didn't have a style of play. Different opinions. So I don't know who was doing the transfers, but they were strengthening areas that didn't need strengthening and leaving areas where we needed strengthening. So it's just been poor all the way along. For me, this has been, as I said earlier, 10 years in the making. And this year I could see at the start of the season we were going to get relegated. We were conceding too many goals and we couldn't score at the other end. And that's, as I said before we come on, this is my 10th relegation, and it had all the hallmarks. You can play well in a game, but if you don't keep a clean sheet or take your chances, you're not going to pick up enough points. And we drew 17 games.
Yeah.
Coventry lost the same amount of games as us and finished in the playoffs. Just
wow, what a good point that is. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. Steve, same question to you, but also I did think you'd come as a vicar tonight. It was getting a bit serious here, but I didn't see the bottom part of your shirt. But to say also in the 125th season, of Cardiff City, and I know over the years those kind of anniversaries have never boded well for the season. But blimey, what a pig's ear for a club celebrating 125 years of football.
Yeah, relegated in 75, relegated in 2000, relegated in 2025. It's almost as if somebody should have had a bet on it, isn't it? But moving swiftly on that, I think we've been going steadily downhill over the last 10 seasons, as Vince says. I think that's probably a bit unfair. Since we had the blip with Neil Warnock taking us up. We have been going sort of gradually downhill over recent seasons. I think Neil Harris, we often forget because it was during COVID, Neil Harris did actually get us to the playoffs the first season we were back down. But every season since then, I think our squad has not been as good as the previous season. And I think the writing was on the wall at the start of the season in respect to the spine of the team, particularly with Kanga. I do wonder, I've seen the comment already about Salek. If we'd have had Salek in at the start of the season, could we have done better? But Kanga was patently not up to the standard required in the Championship. Goodness knows what the Croatian league must be like, because he's actually scored for Dinamo Zagreb. But we are on that. I think the problem has been that we didn't react. We gave the contract to Errol Bullitt at the start of the season. First 6 or 7 games. We drew the one, which was a draw at Swansea. Scored 1 goal. Lost the first 5, didn't we? Apart from that one game. Then we brought Rizza in. A lot of people have said to me over the last few seasons that Rizza should have gone after Boxing Day. The teams around us at the time made changes. Coventry made a change. Look what happened with them bringing Frank Lampard in. Derby made the change. A lot of the teams around us brought quality managers in and pulled themselves away. Oxford, look at Millwall. Oxford, at the time when we were looking for a new manager, Alex Neil went into Millwall. Look how well Millwall did the rest of the season. Millwall have got no really outstanding players, I wouldn't have thought. Yet they turned in a really good performance under a decent manager. I think that's where we went wrong. Is number 1, our personnel. Number 2, our changes are not making the change we should have made them.
All right, Jamie.
I agree. I echo with both of those comments. I think again, it felt like the man who had the power to make the change for whatever reason didn't. Whether that's because of the looming Emiliano Sala case, who knows? But the fact of the matter is, like you said, you've got to look at the top of the football club. This has happened with any manager that's been here over the last few years. It's very slow. It's very, undecisive at time. Well, a lot of the time. And again, you've got respected journalists like Paula Bantano that have been quite vocal about how even when, board members were suggesting about changing, like the likes of Derby and others did, it was just pushed aside as if to say, no. And again, everyone is in it together. The players, some of the errors the players made. You look at Callum Chambers' red card on the weekend. I think that just summarised our season, if I'm brutally honest. It was just stupid errors. Lack of effort at times, definitely a lack of application. And like Vince said, if you can't, if you're not going to score goals and you're conceding, 70 odd goals in a season, you are where you are over 46 games. And ultimately, I think it was very probably unfair for Ramsey and co to go in with 3 games to go. I think it should have been a lot sooner than that, in my opinion. But this, I don't think this is just a this season problem. I think this is probably stemmed from a lack of ideology and a lack of plan at the club over the last few years.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a bit. Nigel, anything to add to that?
No, well, it's dreadful. All the years I've supported Cardiff, I don't think I've ever seen them finish bottom of the table in a season, and certainly not adrift by 4 points we ended up this one, didn't we? There's a lot of things Cardiff fans can argue and differ over, but I think the one thing we're all united on is the problem is the man at the top. And without any change to that structure and how he goes about running the club and the business at Cardiff City, even in League One, it's hard to see what can change. We could have Pep and Still doing a joint manager job next season, and we'd struggle because there's no structure, there's no day-to-day management or control of the club, and it's just torturous, isn't it? It is going down a spiral, and you can see us just sliding away, and there's nothing being done to arrest it or turn it around at the moment, and it needs a fundamental change. I don't mind Vincent Alm staying. I know people saying, "Oh, he's got to go. It's time for change." As long as he invests in a club, but wants to change the structure and do the right things, which he's not been doing, then great. But the fear is he will just carry on behaving in the way that he has done, and it takes the club into the deeper mire with it.
So Vince, going back to what Jamie said earlier, this is my personal opinion, right? I don't know the structure of the 92 football clubs in the UK. I don't know, right? But I would struggle to think there's a worse run football club in British football than Cardiff City. I think just the way the run is inverted commas run on a daily basis. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I'll put it this way: you could understand, couldn't you, the viewpoint of what Nigel said. Vincent Alm goes, somebody's got to buy the club firstly, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money involved, etc. But surely it's time that the owner of a football club has done so disastrously badly with such an incredible fan base like Cardiff City, looks at the people who are allegedly running the club and makes some pretty significant changes, or at least considers doing that, isn't it? Isn't that where we are at?
Yeah, we are. It's almost like he's a gambler. He can't leave it go. He keeps putting money in. I would imagine his bank manager's not too happy with him either. This is not an anti-Tan thing I'm coming up with. I'm in Nigel's camp. He has got the financial backing to propel the club forward, but he needs somebody. You can't run a club from 6,000 miles away. Is one thing. The second thing, support is that clubs exist for the fans and for the city of Cardiff and the surrounding areas, the valleys. That's what the club exists for. It doesn't exist as a plaything that you run by lucky numbers or lucky colours. It doesn't work that way. He wouldn't set the business up like that. He'd get somebody in to run that business, i.e., like Ken Chu's doing now with the HROing thing. He'd set it up properly to make it successful. So I don't understand why this is taking so long with the football club. And he has 2 moves for me to make. One, he needs to reform. He needs to totally reform and bring somebody in who can run the club. And it doesn't have to be a director of football. I know everyone says direct football. What you don't want is a puppet. You want somebody there who knows football, who knows the game inside out, who's got a track record, and can also run a football club. Because everything so far has been a mess. You look at the finances are a mess. The team's a mess. It's just everything's a mess. So you need somebody in there. Or if he can't do that, if he's not willing to do that, the other thing you got to do just to stop him losing money, because I worked it out. He's probably nigh on £3 million into it by now. And that's a fair chunk of money to be in League One, to spend in League One. But I might be wrong, but that's just me working out on the back of a bit of paper, But he needs to sell it at a reasonable price to stop losing money, and not a ridiculous price. They're the two things. They're the things that needs to happen. He needs to relook at how he's going to run this club if he's going to stay, and do it with a plan with somebody who knows what they're doing. Or he needs to sell it to somebody for a reasonable price who's going to take the club forward. Because we're the capital of Wales, and we should demand Premier League football as supporters. We shouldn't be playing in League One. The size of the city and everything else is at the city, we're the top of the country of everything. We're the best in the country of everything else, apart from a football team. And as the custodian, he needs to look at that. He needs to look at why the club exists and how it exists. A British football club is run, and why it exists. It exists for its fans, for the communities around it. It doesn't exist for the owner. He either does that and gets somebody in to take the club forward, or he sells it for a reasonable price. I don't see any other way. And look, he's a brave man spending all that money, Steve. I wouldn't do it, just by looking at stats or whatever, to see who's best. And you give it to somebody who knows what they're doing.
So just a personal connection between you and me, Vince. I think it must have been, October, something like that, 2002, I think it was. And me, you, and Keith Cooper sat down and we talked about the Cardiff City phone-in. Yeah, before it was a thing. And it was obviously during that season, that magical season, Andy Campbell and all the rest of it. Yeah. It's kind of sad, isn't it, the cycle of how things have worked out.
It is.
Never been, should we? We just
no, we shouldn't be. No, and that's why we need a Sam Amman moment. We need a Sam Amman, right? As I know he's got his critics, but somebody like him, I don't mean owning a club. Somebody like him who's who knows how fans think, knows how the football works. Somebody like him, that's what the club needs at the moment, to bring everyone together. He is absolutely, for all his faults and everything. I know there's people out there that say I'm nuts. I got really close to Sam. One thing he knows, right? He knows football and he knows supporters. I wouldn't work for him personally, but he's fantastic to supporters and he knows his football, right? It's somebody like that who's out there is what the club needs. We need that Sam Amman moment, as I call it. And, there was a cloud the way he left the club, but that's what the club needs, is somebody who knows how fans tick and knows how the football scene ticks.
Okay, well, let's get Steve's take on that. Obviously, I had a little bit of a connection with Sam Amman, because through Phil Suarez, bless him. I was involved with the PA for a while, and I had some crazy conversations with Sam Amman. So, which wouldn't surprise anyone. So what Vince is saying there, I suppose the eccentric, the maverick, someone who can take it on with the view of not maybe necessarily making a quick buck, but somebody who's got the passion and belief to take what is, you say, sleeping giant, League Division 1 club like Cardiff City, take them, revitalise them, and give them the boot back. We need someone with a little bit of kind of endeavour and almost a crazy spirit around them, don't we, Steve?
We do. But I would say as well, first of all, going back to Vincent Tan, my opinion is he is here until the Sala case is done. So we're stuck with him until that happens. Sam Amman, yes, came in 2000, obviously revitalised the club. However, we were all there in that game against Sheffield United when Graham Kavanagh had to leave on the Friday. Helicopter came from Wigan to take him there. Basically, he had to go. We had to get the money in then. Otherwise, we were completely scuppered. So yeah, all the passion was there, but then we've got to remember what happened, how close to the wall we did apparently actually go at the time. We need we need somebody else to come in. Going back over the years as well, you look at some of the previous owners we've had. I remember I was saying to somebody today actually. I remember there was a home game against Shrewsbury, must have been in the late 80s, early 90s, where there was a sit-down protest on the Bob Bank at the end of the game about Tony Clemo. there was also the protest about Shamish Kumar in the cup game against Gillingham, I think, at the time, with banners about him. So lessons from history are not being learnt here. We've got another owner in who we're not happy with. I think
remember Jim Cadman days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Mark Pontin said the other day, we got the wrong billionaire. There are other billionaires out there who chose to move into another club for whatever reason. I think we need to move forward with a new owner rather than any owner we've had before. So
going back, Jamie, to the comment from Michael, which I must say I totally understand. For Town to stay, if this is the wake up call, blimey, you can't have a much bigger wake up call. I mean, he's not got a great success rate as at any of his football clubs actually, but Cardiff City is the biggest, and we were in the Premiership, and people would give him a lot of credit for that. FA Cup, League Cup finals, etc., right? But look where we are now. Surely this is the wake up call now, isn't it?
Well, we all thought that with other things, isn't it? But again, it comes down to his stubbornness, doesn't it? It comes down to him as a person. And, when he was over last time, he gave it, to the Wales Online reporters that we're very lucky to have him. And it was almost like we were in, we almost had to bow down to him. We're, not for 1 second are any of us not denying that the money that he puts in to keep the club going and keep the lights on and so on. But that's not enough in football. If that's the case, and that's what you're going to be as an owner, then you will have no success. You will have no, sort of direction as a club. I completely agree. I think, you look at when we've had certain managers who come in, I think our club needs to bring back what we are. Vince talks about the valleys there and stuff like that. When I first started, coming to watch Cardiff City at Ninian Park, you'd have the Valley Rams, you'd have all these people coming in from different parts of South Wales because they felt that it was their club. It's what they wanted to do on a Saturday or a Tuesday, no matter what the weather. And I think over the years, they've and it's their own, sort of decision. I think they felt probably disconnected more than anything with the club. And I don't think the board level have done anything to do it. They can put all these things on, like these fan parliaments and so on. And that's fine. That's no problem. But what are you actually going to do to get these diehard fans at back? Because they're still tuning in on Saturdays and Tuesdays to the radio or, on the streams, whatever it may be. They still want to be there. But you need to give them something to come back in. And I think, like I said, we are a massive club in our own thing. We're a capital city club. You look at Reading, no disrespect to Reading, but they've taken so long to get taken over. If Reading in their position can get taken over, surely we'd be an appetising proposition for somebody. Tan needs to wake up. Let's be brutally honest. He needs to wake up, and if he's not going to do it, if it's people underneath him, i.e. Dalman or Chew, then why are they still in the roles that they're in? Why are they still there if they're the ones that are wasting the money that he is spending? Like Vince said earlier on in regards to his accountant, we're not making a profit. So as businessmen, why on earth are they still in a role if we're losing money and quite a lot of money? Let's be honest. So
yeah,
let's just hope that, like Aaron Ramsey keeps saying in every press conference, structure. We've also seen a statement from Vincent. What was it last week?
Yeah. What did you think of that, Jamie?
I to be honest with you, I think words are cheap. If I'm brutally honest, we've heard statements galore before, but actions speak louder than words, don't they? So ultimately, it's all good saying that you're still invested in the club and you still, sort of you're behind the club and so on. Whatever his words were, I can't remember the exact quotations. But when you don't turn up and you don't look like you are making an effort as such, I think it sort of creates that grey cloud, doesn't it, over what your sort of intentions are with the club.
Yeah. I mean, that's comment of the night, by the way, just for humor value there from we know who that is. Yeah. So Jamie, just to say to you, not to embarrass you in any way, but honestly, I see you and your family travel up and down the country watching Cardiff City all over the place. What was it, 4:30 start or something on the weekend to go and watch us play at Norwich? We conceded 3 goals in 6 minutes. Man sent off, How do you manage to convey to your wife that you need to keep watching Cardiff City?
I think it's something that I do with my children. She went, with her dad, her late dad, and when it's in you, this is a special club. It's passion. Like you speak to the fans, you can listen to the older generation of fans, and you can listen to their stories, the 70s, 80s. I'm forever learning, about the history of the club. But I love the fact that you can take 400 to Preston and you can make that memory. these big 6 Premier League clubs, how can you enjoy modern football as such? This is what it is for me. This is, my kids, my boy was all right. He was on a chair the other day and I said, oh, you had to get down. But he was enjoying that moment with his friends, and when you can enjoy it when things aren't going well, you've got to experience those lows to enjoy the highs. And like I said, football is 90 minutes. Don't get me wrong. We want to win. But that shouldn't define our day. And I think a lot of people will have a good laugh on the train going up and the train going back and on the buses when we've gone midweeks with Vince and the supporters club. I think it's a community. It's a general feeling. And again, you make friends for life, don't you, through the love of the club.
Jamie, can I just a personal question? How old are you?
I'm 31.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm glad I asked you, right? So for the last, like I said to Vince earlier, for the last 22, 23 years of this show, we've been a championship, premiership, and above. So you've never actually witnessed it at a lower level. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that at all?
No, I mean, again, I just think that when maybe it's the modern generation of fans, and when you haven't experienced the lows, you're kind of sort of oblivious to what it is actually like. I mean, I know a lot of fans are happy, sort of they're more. What's the word for it? They're almost content because the fact they can tick off the ground, it's like, oh, I can go to Lincoln. I haven't been to Lincoln and stuff, but
you can go train spotting to do that, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the problem is when you look at it, football in general as a club, you take the motion out of it and you look at it as a business and everything that goes with football. It's a massive worry. You look at just the TV revenue alone that we've lost because of going down. They're massive figures. You're going to naturally lose probably a large chunk of your playing squad as well. This is not, like last summer where it was, we need to sign a few players. This is almost like Project Reset. And it sounds daft saying that probably, but it really does feel like now is the time probably to rebuild, integrate these youngsters and to really get a philosophy or some sort of structure in place because, League One is an unforgiving league. You've got some big clubs in their right, sleeping, like Bradford, for example, 23,000 was it the other day? They're going to be in there. They're not easy places to go to.
So, Nigel, you have operated at lower levels.
Yeah, much lower levels than League One. Yeah.
What would be your message to?
I've seen this 90th now to 92. Vince has as well, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, definitely.
A couple of belters in the 80s or whatever, but. What would be your message to City's younger fans? Just as a very brief intro, I went today to get a new passport. The guy behind the passport counter was a City fan. The next guy came in with a Bluebird tattoo on. He's been following them for 22, 23 years. He said, I'm not renewing. That's it. I've had it. What would your message be to City's younger fan base?
This is the way for me because, the away support is magnificent. Always is, always has been, and they'll be there in League One. That's your hardcore, though. I do feel beyond that with a club dying of apathy amongst the public and even amongst City fans. Saturday I didn't bother watching the game. I could have watched it on my mobile. Didn't watch it. Wasn't interested in it. I've missed a couple of home games this season. And as you get older, you get other things going on in your life and all the rest of it. But there's a generation of fans who've only ever known us in the Championship or the Premier League. And I don't think the club do anything really to entice children down there. Look at the family stand empty, the season ticket prices. I think they could do a season ticket for 25 quid for kids. Get them down there. You'll get the parent down there. You'll get them spending money down the kiosks and everything. There's a lot of seats to sell down at Cardiff City. You need a crowd down there. I remember, was it Rick Wright when he used to do, prices based on the league position, things like that. You've got to someone's got to shake up this club because, I just feel it's, I think most of us will feel the same this season. It felt like a chore to go and watch Cardiff City. I go watch them at home on a Saturday because that's what I do. And if I don't do that, I'll be dragged around the shops with the missus. So, I'd rather go watch Cardiff. I'd rather watch Cardiff and do that. But, it has felt like that. If you look at Cardiff's home record for 4.5 years, the last 100 games, league games, we've had 115 points from the last 100 home games. That is disgusting. It's embarrassing. It's the worst record of any club in the 92. So, great for the away fans. They love their days out. But for most of us go and watch Cardiff City at home, and it's just not a pleasure to watch. And something has just got to change fundamentally in terms of how the club is run, how the fans can connect to the club. and the match day experience, which is, it's just not great at Cardiff City Stadium anymore, is it? Few of us would really look forward to go watching a game on a Saturday. We do it because it's what we do. It's in our blood. You can't say you're always excited to get down there and go and see it. It's just what we do.
No, but I mean, Vince is the perfect one to ask, really, because obviously, Vince, you're actively involved in trying to get the atmosphere going at the City home matches. What's that been like? This season when we kind of been so poor at home. I think. By the way, I think we won 1 in the last 12 matches. I'm looking at the stats. I think that's right. What's it like to sort of try and get the spirit up?
Oh, tough. Really tough. We miss chances, concede goals, and I understand why fans just don't want to get behind them. And it wouldn't matter whether you move the Canton stand to the family stand next to away fans, because Nigel remember when we were awful. As soon as you go behind, our fans go quiet, even if they stood next to the away fans, and some of them will just go back to the bar because they won't be able to handle the banter, if I'm being honest. And that's not being disrespectful. That's just the fact of the way they were. And I got a friend, a Luton Town friend, and he came down midweek to watch us, and he never does away games. I said, "Why have you chosen this one?" Took some time off work, and he said, him and his friends thought this would be a game we could win away from home because Cardiff's home record is so poor. That's Luton Town who at the time we were all stunned. They beat us, but it's to get the atmosphere going down there. The players got to do something on the pitch as well, and it's difficult when they're not. You can carry on singing, but it's got to be entertainment. Expendable income is at a very, very tight in South Wales. People are not on the best wages throughout the country, and if you're spending all our money to come down and be entertained, well, you're not getting it, are you? So you'd rather take them to the pitches where you're guaranteed entertainment for you and the kids, and that's the same with young lads, teenagers and that who go with their mates. They'd rather go and watch something or do something that they're going to get entertained rather than get beaten 2-1 by the bottom club like at home and then watch a relegation. It's all to do with structure. Once you get a structure right off the pitch, it won't come overnight. It never does, but it'll come within a couple of years. You can start working with fan engagement and then improving it, But at this moment in time, they're so disconnected. They don't know what the fans want, at all. The fans are split themselves, and it's all down to poor leadership. There's no leaders in the club. There's nobody there on a day-to-day basis, as Nigel said earlier. And the whole thing's got to change. If you have a look at Tan's performance since he's had the club, he's killed the spirit, killed the finances, and killed the football. He's totally killed us, and that. Whether that's being harsh because of the money spent, well, it's not harsh because that is his performance of running the club. We've lost our spirit. We're losing money. God knows how much. I don't know what the true figure is, but it's a lot of money, and we're awful at football. The one thing I would say that's improved is the academy. The academy has got a lot better, and that is the one shining light that we got, and we've got some good players coming through. What we need now is a good structure to develop them, because that's where our future will be. We don't want to do a Wrexham, get a load of journeymen, and to get out the league. You've got to have the basis. All the clubs who've done well going into League One have rebuilt and built a young squad and work with them. Brentford, Leeds, Nottingham Forest, Brighton, all them sides. They went down, Southampton, and they started again. And they built with youngsters with energy and pace, and not short fixes like we had with Warnock. Warnock. You have a look at Warnock's legacy in most clubs. They end up on 4 or 5 years of struggling after he's left the club because he leaves them with no assets. I'm not saying he's a poor manager. What he does, he gets you players in to get you out the league or get you out the trouble, but he doesn't leave you any assets, any future, and that's what we've been. We've been putting sticky plasters over we've been wound for too long. Needed bandaging up and repairing.
Yeah, soul destroying really, because it's been coming for so long. Steve, obviously you a home match for you. You travel from Nottingham, so you're hardly down the road. Last time I saw you, we had like it was nice to see you, and I obviously I caught you at the time when we just knew we were going down. So I'm glad I got a chance to kind of connect with you there. But the comment that Pete Bradbury made earlier, just recently, was talking about in terms of who's going to make these decisions, who's going to make these kind of structural and philosophical decisions. Surely we can't rely on the current incumbents, can we, to make the wise decisions?
We can't, but I think we're going to have to, because, as I said earlier, I don't think Vincent Tan's going to be going till after the Sala position.
Not necessarily Vincent Tan, but the people who have at the moment the responsibility, daytime running of the football club.
There is no. Obviously, I've no doubt that I'm no doubt that
I'm going to make a decision.
I no doubt that Mehmet's a fantastic merchant banker, no pun intended, and I've no doubt that the Ken Chu is a fantastic car salesman. However, a point I made to somebody else today is that if you want a lawyer, you don't ask an accountant to do it for you. You get a person who knows what they're doing. And I think a business of a football club is completely different to any other sort of businesses. It's got very much a captive audience. So going back to the question you asked Nigel earlier as well, I'd like to say that I'd say to the younger generation, go along next season, enjoy League One. Unfortunately for me, I've only got one new ground to do next season, so even it. So I'll see you all there. But I think enjoy the ride. When we went down in 75-6. I was a bit too young to remember that, but 82-3 was one of my favourite seasons. I missed 3 away games all season. I love that season. Yeah. Fantastic time. Yeah.
75-76 was good. We had Tony Evans,
Alston.
Yeah, it was and also it was a great season. And it actually, being controversial, it was the first time I seen us play in red with Shrewsbury away, and we come out in red with the away kit. So that was a great season. That was, because we were underdogs there, and we had a fantastic side. Sorry to butt in there, Steve.
No.
Yeah, it was a great season. Yeah, it was a good team.
75. We changed to the blue with the yellow and white stripes.
Oh, we did,
Classic.
We never. It's your 10th relegation, Vince. We won't have another one because we never got relegated in that kit.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. No.
So there's a big. I mean, it's just to put a bit of a smile on our faces. Wouldn't it be lovely if Division 1 we whack that kit on and just have a great season and
it's got yellow in it.
See that kit again.
Then we had identity more, I think, because we were the only team who wore that kit.
Yeah.
At the moment, we're wearing identity kit. I mean, for example, when we a few seasons ago when we had the Adidas kit, Leicester City had exactly the same kit, just a different badge on it. We need something more for an identity. Let's get more of a Cardiff City identity. Let's get the blue with the yellow and white stripe on, away kit, yellow with the blue and white stripe on, and perhaps have a third kit as chocolate and amber quarters. We're going back to Riverside. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we know they're not listening, but it's a great suggestion.
There's one issue with that. It got yellow in it. It's an unlucky colour. Apparently, allegedly.
Go, Jamie. Going back to what Vince said just now, which is true, and I there's another side of this as well. The academy. We started to bring through some youngsters. So on the weekend, I think we're pronouncing him Nyakua. Looks like a decent young winger. Obviously, Capacchio's got a big future, I think, as a right. But I love Lawler. I love the look of Lawler. These kind of players coming through. How confident are you that we can use that as a starting point? And the other side of it is, if we go down, I don't know, somebody on the panel might know better than me, but are there implications in terms of financial stability, for the academy by going down that level, in terms of will players stick around,
The academy, I think, is flourishing. I'll give a mention to Gavin Chesterfield. I think he's came in, he's put a general working environment in place, and I don't mean that just on the pitch. I think off the pitch, there's a platform in place for them to be mature young adults. I think that's just as important. The players you mentioned there, I mean, again, they've got a game, their final game tomorrow, at home at 2:00. Dylan Lawler's fantastic. Again, you saw that maturity with him the other day. I watched him in Watford Friday ago, and he took the ball out and he outside footed it, pinged it across the pitch. And I thought, wow, these are players you can probably build around. I mean, they didn't look out of place on Saturday. Let's be honest. Tans Nyakua, he's a winger by trade. or up front. He's quite versatile. Yeah, when he came on, he was almost like a right wing back, but they didn't phase him. They're playing without fear, and I think that's a good thing. You've got Louis Giles, who's got a wand of a left foot. You've got Cody Twos, who hopefully makes the next step up. And I'm missing a lot of players there, but you can go down to the 18s. There's a young boy called Jacob Hobson who played for the 21s. They're all stepping up in age grades because the platform is there. My only worry is, and again, it's like any football club, isn't it, that these youngsters, unfortunately, can be taken away from us due to the category, which again, myself and Vince have been in meetings where the category is something that football clubs can't change. That's an FA thing that we can't. We can fight as much as we want, but ultimately, if the big boys come knocking, they've taken the likes of Charlie Crew, they've taken Lewis Benjamin and other really good players. But we are really now, we've got a training ground for them. That's something that they probably didn't have many years ago. It's a really, really nice setup up there. So we're giving them the platform. But you've got to, I think, be realistic as well, haven't you? You can't just put 10 youngsters out there with one, sort of experienced head in the midfield and expect them to flourish. Because, I think that's a bit harsh on them. But there is a lot of positives from the youngsters coming through. And again, why not give them the chance? Why not give them the chance? Because it was really nice to see. I think I was listening to someone else. I think it was Ryan March. He said that Craig Bellamy did a thing at Penabont the other week, and he mentioned Ronan Capaccio as somebody that when he was at Burnley, apparently that he'd really liked. So when you look at that, Ronan Capaccio's, he's had a big injury this season. Let's not forget that. And yet I thought he played really well against Norwich. So positive signs there, mate. I think, like you said, why not play them, eh?
Yeah, well, any thoughts on that, Nigel? Because obviously the agenda changed on the weekend, didn't it? Although Fish missed the tackle and Chambers was then exposed, actually. But, in terms of the youngsters, anyone kind of exciting you?
Well, I think that is possibly one of the redeeming features that we have for next season, because if you look at the experienced players, the older pros we got, the ones you wanted to lead by example, you can't say any or many of them did. They were all a huge disappointment. But when you brought in the youngsters, they were the ones who freshened up things, livened it up. The weird thing is, I don't always watch the development teams. I do see bits of them, but the standard of football they play and the performances they put in often look better than the first team. There's a lot more passing and movement. Some of the goals I've seen on video highlights are exceptional. And you do wonder, when they step up into the first team and all of a sudden it looks unstructured, doesn't it? How they actually sort of cope with the demands of that. But in League One, I think a few of those boys can really be allowed the time and opportunity to flourish. Kean Ashford is great. I think he's got a huge potential. And some of the other, everyone who's come in and had an opportunity this season, be in the cup game or in league outings, have all performed very well.
Villa as well, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see the potential there. They're going to be consistent and inconsistent. We've seen that with Kean Ashford at times, haven't we? But that's part of the education and the structure. But I think it gives us a real basis and a foundation if you can bring in quite a handful of those players and get in a couple of good experienced players who are natural leaders on the pitch, because we've got experienced players, but they're not leaders at the moment, and that's one of the things that they've struggled on this season. There's a complete lack of leadership on the pitch. And they have to find one or two players who are going to offer that next season. And if you can get those experienced older heads, played the game, all levels, and can boss a game and allow those younger players to develop, I think there's a lot of promise there.
So and the right manager as well. I think you've got it. It's
right manager's essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, that is the key thing now. Is like you said earlier on about structure and things. It's great having these nucleus of players coming through. But if then you go and get a Mick McCarthy-esque or, someone sort of an experienced head load.
Mick McCarthy these tests.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just go back then, I feel like, on yourself a little bit. You've got, I'm not saying go very, very inexperienced by any means, but somebody who can work with youngsters. We've seen Ramsey and Gunter and, Matthew Bloxham and Top Hutton. They all know these youngsters through international and at the domestic, our club. So whether we stick with that, who knows? All will be revealed, I suppose. But again, you've got to allow them to have, like you said there, Nigel, they're going to make errors, but they're only going to learn if they make the error to learn from it. Because it's not always going to be perfect, and I don't think we
Yeah,
expect it to be perfect. But what we
No.
can say, like Nigel said there, is one thing that isn't lacking is their effort and their passion. They give their all, they leave it out there. And I think then fans can resonate with that, as opposed to some experienced heads this year we've seen with, let's say an El Ghazi, for example, that have come in, and you kind of feel that there's a massive disconnect between what the club is to him and what it is to say a Kean Ashford, who actually lives and breathes the club.
So do you want to respond to that, Vince? Because, by the way, there's some really horrible comments going on. I'm deleting some of them. I'm just now having it in the chat. But in terms of we always talk about this, not just Cardiff City fans, probably most clubs, having your local youngsters, one of our own and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I do love all of that. And does League One give us a bit more leeway to be a bit more that focused that way?
It does, yeah. You've got to look at people like Danny Gabardon. He came to us when we were the old Division 3, League 2, and James Collins, all them. I wonder if they would have had an opportunity if we'd been in the Championship, and they progressed really well. And a lot of our youngsters did. Chris Gunter, all them. They come up. They were with us in the lower leagues as kids. I don't get me wrong, but they all come really. They all came through the ranks in the lower leagues and progressed into Premier League players. And you talk about Ruben Caldwell, these are his critics. We love to knock our own at times. Robert Earnshaw used to get slated when he was first, in the late 90s when he first started playing for us. I remember him being hammered for the whole game because he missed a couple of chances against Barnet. We were 2 down. And then he scored 2 goals, I think one in the 88th and one 90 plus 1 minute to get us a point 2-2. And everyone shouting Ernie. I was thinking, crikey, 10 minutes ago, the 200 of us were saying how poor he was, and that's the thing. But you see how good Caldwell was, and Martin Ryan made a great point. I'd seen the comment come on about Lawler and his passing forward.
Yeah.
Look how good Caldwell looked, receiving the ball off a centre half. Good pass, yeah. And he was able to dictate the play. And that's been Caldwell's problem. He's got players, when he's played with Ramsey and Tanner, who are on his level, he looks good and he is good. He don't look good. He is a good player. But he hasn't had that all season. He's been, the team's been chopped and changed. That's been the big thing. These youngsters have been coming into the side for 2 minutes and then they're out. And you don't get a chance to build up partnerships. Football clubs, there was one thing that Dave Jones liked was partnerships as a manager. Right? We played some great football under Dave Jones. And that's why you like consistency in when you used to pick the team, because you like players to get to know each other, left back and left winger, 2 centre midfielders. They worked as partners. He was an old-fashioned 4-4-2 guy, the 2 forwards, they get to know each other and play. And that's what he liked. And the team hasn't had that. They've been chopped and changed. They've had different systems. Again, there's no planning, no style of football. And these youngsters, in the academy, they're all playing one style of football. And then they come into the first team and God knows where they're going to play. And sometimes they look like a fish out the water. And it's down to what they're being asked to do. And they're inexperienced. So, for youngsters, don't forget, I know we're giving Gavin Chesterfield some praise and he deserves it, don't get me wrong. But these players have been there for 10, 12 years, a long time before Gavin Chesterfield came. We've had them since they were 8 or 9. So really, you've got this started 10 years ago, what we're getting now. It hasn't just happened. Somebody would have had to put this in plan 10 years ago. What we need to do is make sure it continues, because we had this before and they just fell off the wagon. We went awful with our youngsters for a while. So we need to make sure that continues. I think with Gavin Chesterfield, there's all the chances he will. But we also need a manager who's going to nurture them. And Steve Cooper's one, who I'm not saying he'd come to Cardiff with what's happened in the past, but that's the type of player who's good with young players and mixes experience with youngsters and makes players better. He improves them and he makes them better. We've never had a manager poached since I think it was Phil Neal when Man City came and got him in the 90s, and I almost paid the taxi fare myself. I was so shocked.
Personality.
We have not had somebody come and poach one of our managers, have we? So that's testament to where we are, really.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about managers. because we've only got like 15 minutes max now to go. A couple of things I want to talk about. One of them is managers. So I suppose to start the ball rolling, what's your thoughts on Aaron? You know, Aaron Ramsey doesn't seem to want it moving forward, but I wouldn't say it's out of the picture. Have you noticed any kind of changes in style or any encouraging signs there, Vince?
No. What I've noticed is consistency up until the last game in picking the squad and the style of play he was trying to do. There was a lot more energy in the team by putting Rigamoto into centre midfield. That gave us energy because we might not have the ability of some midfielders, but one thing he got is an engine and energy, and he got pace. And so he gave us that energy for that, and I think that was the right move. And they got players playing in the right positions. Yeah, I think Aaron Ramsey's head, he still thinks there's a World Cup in him, and there's an opportunity of us getting to the World Cup next year. And I think he wants to play, and I don't think he'll be able to do that being a player manager. I doubt if is the only way he's going to do is by playing football and getting in that squad. So I don't think he'll take it, even if he was the answer. But yeah, it's first of all they got to identify what style of play they want to do, Steve, and what the future is, and then have a succession plan. You know, Brighton will have 3 managers they're tracking at the moment in case the manager leaves tomorrow. You know, we won't have that because we won't know what we're looking at. There's no point looking at the player because he got good stats in the 3rd division of the Belgian league. What you've got to look at is that player going to suit the style of play we want to play? Is he going to fit in our team?
If we know what that is.
Yeah, if we know what it is. And at the moment, until we get that, it's pointless. You know, as everyone's saying on here, it's not the board. The board ain't going to appoint the manager. It's not going to be, Mehmet Dalman or Ken Chu. Mehmet did put his neck on the line with Bullet, and and that didn't work. But it'll be Vincent Tan, or Vincent Tan will need to get somebody in and take advice off somebody who is good at the business doing it. Otherwise, it'll just be the same.
Okay. So I made a comment earlier, Nigel, which was just a facetious comment really about Mick McCarthy. We couldn't afford him, but what I mean, that has kind of been the attitude of the club really, that they've signed a lot of players. Some of them have turned out to be disappointing, shall we say, journeymen, etc. But and we've had a lot of people come through the staff who ended up managing the club and whatever. I know, okay, we're going to the League One, but we have to speculate to accumulate. Isn't this the time now to actually spend some bucks, Nigel, and bring in inverted commas a proper manager?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's something like we had 7, 8 managers in 3 or 4 years before Warnock, and then we've had another 7 or something in the 5 years since. So that's 15 managers in something like 17, 18 years. And each of them will bring in their own players, and then you keep getting this unstructured squad, or you've had a head of recruitment bringing in club signings, and just seems to mess the waters even more. So yeah, this is an opportunity for the club and for Vincent Tan to have a complete reset, and that's what has to happen. They cannot carry on doing the things that they've been doing. I think they've got to get an experienced manager in, but they've also got to get a manager who can connect with the fan base, and we haven't had that for quite a while. And I just think the place needs livening up, and it's I know he's a bit of a loose cannon at times, but Nathan at Charlton is probably sort of someone who would unite the fan base. He has got that touch of him, but he also seems to be able to motivate this team. The job he's done with Charlton, getting him into the playoffs, has been fantastic. The trouble is now he's not available for a few weeks, and they've got to look beyond that. But I think they do need to find someone who knows the game, can work the owner, and Aaron Ramsey's. I know he's being mentioned in dispatches, and from whispers I hear, it's not out the question at the moment that he could be asked to take on the role. And if he does, I think he will insist on having that structure changed. He would not take it under any circumstance.
Yeah, good point.
And he would, but he would need assistance, because I think he does want to play in a World Cup. So if he does, maybe it's going to be some sort of coaching thing with a mentor above him. But if that's what it takes to change the structure and how the club moves forward, then fine. If it's something that he wants to do, But if it's not him and we look elsewhere, the same rules apply. The whole structure has to change. And whoever comes in can't just be happy to have a weekly conversation with Vince. He's a nice man and he watches all our games. That can't happen anymore. That's got to go.
Yeah.
Steve, can I just make one
point?
Please. Right, I'll quick. I know you're going to go around the thing.
No,
I've said more than enough. We don't take the cheap option. We just spend money badly. I just want to put that out there. The managers we get in, who people say the cheap option, they're probably the most highest paid managers in the championship. They have been. We just pay stupid money, and people need to know that this is why the finance is in such a mess. You know, we're paying people like Kanga top money. We're paying managers top money. Bullock was one of the most highest paid managers in the league. So people, it's not the cheap option; it's the wrong option.
They may be costing money, Vince, but we keep giving the keys of the car to learner drivers, don't we? And that's happened too often.
Absolutely, no research.
Jamie and Steve, any quick thoughts on managers? If you could choose a manager for Cardiff City,
go on, Steve. You go first.
Okay, right. I kind of had my thunder stolen by some of the comments here. I'd like to see us get a proven manager at League One level. I see that Nathan Jones is being mentioned, obviously, but Charlton in the playoffs, he could end up in a higher division. Yeah. Similarly, Challoner at Stockport. Managers who've got a proven record with teams at that level. We're not going to get them unless they move on. But somebody like Alex Neil would have been good. I'd like a proven manager. I think Vince is right as well. There is the thing that we're paying top dollar, but we're not getting the best bang for our buck, are we? So I think Challoner or Nathan Jones for me.
Jamie,
I'd like someone who thinks more about attacking and modern football. You know, again, I'm not saying to do the Pep Guardiola like if everything passing out and what have you, but I think Des Buckingham is someone that is out there, did well with Oxford. I think he is someone who played well with a shoestring budget. Again, it's like you said there, you just don't want to do rinse repeat like we've been doing for the last however many years. Again, it's like someone said before, it feels like we promote from within, and that has its own benefits, but it's a massive risk. And you'd hope and you'd want people to do get the job, to have a CV and evidence that backs up that they've got a certain way. But I suppose that comes then with not having interference from above as well. It's all fine and dandy saying that you're managing up like Rizza did, and that has its own narrative behind it. But it has to be your team, it has to be your way, and it has to be the way that the players buy into. You can't be buying into all this added extra noise that we've heard from players in the past and managers in the past that have had phone calls from the owner and what have you, telling them that they need to play this certain way. So I mean, you've seen Carl Robinson's name pop up today. He wouldn't be the worst of appointments, but he probably, if he hasn't got Salford up, no disrespect to Salford, is he going to do much with us? I don't know, but it's got to be the right, it's got to be the right appointment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive decision now. Nigel, Nathan Jones is getting mentioned quite a bit. Thoughts on that?
Well, he's a bit of a nutter, isn't he? And Cardiff City fans are a bit of a nutter as well.
Cardiff City fan, he's a nutter. We love him already.
So in some ways, he's a good batch. But I think he would bring a buzz to the place. And I know I've made the point a couple of times, but I do think we're a club that needs shaking up, livening up, and however we do it, we got to get there somehow. So I wouldn't rule him out, and he could be quite exciting. But he is a bit of a loose cannon, There's but in fairness to him, other than a pretty poor spell at Stoke, he's done pretty well managerial wherever he's been. So he could be a good option for us. And he's as good as any of the names I've heard linked so far.
Okay, so we haven't got a long one. I wanted to mention just briefly, if we just whiz around on this one very briefly. Yousef Sala, 2 goals on the weekend, great penalty by the way. He's a real handful. I think with the right service, I mean, he'd be an absolute nightmare at Division 1. He's top of the list, is he, Vince, for us, the players we absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was so good on Saturday, especially when he went down to 10 men. He really was. He's the best we've had in a long while. I'm trying to think somebody all round. Look, I know sometimes he's not the best on the ball, but from a centre forward, he's just got everything. He has the battle. He's got commitment, passion, but he also knows he can score goals. He can run with the ball. He can take players on. He's got apps. He's the real deal. We'll do well to keep hold of him, but that's who we need. Somebody like him. If we keep him, we got a good chance of coming straight back up.
I agree. Yeah.
There's one manager, one guy who look. I'm in with Jamie Des Buckingham. There's a guy who's left Liverpool. I don't know how much, but he's done a lot of lower league stuff. Is Mark Bridge Wilkinson. He was their under 18 academy coach, won a lot of stuff with them since 2020, and he knows the lower leagues. It's a bit of, he's good at bringing youngsters through. It's somebody in that kind of ilk I think we need. That he played a lot of his football at lower league, but he's done a lot of his coaching at top Premier League clubs. But look, that's just an out there one. I said the same about Steve Cooper when we appointed the Wales guy. It's with the Brighton. I forgot his name already.
You got so many stuff to keep up.
Yeah. In 2016-17, before Warnock came. Yes, yeah. We should have. I was touting Cooper around then, the start of last season, but people hadn't heard of him. So apart from Keith, but there we are.
Great comment there from Stevie. Sala plays like he was born on Sloper Road. They're like, he's got a fantastic attitude.
Yeah. It's strange because Salek scored 8 for us in the league, and I did mention it on Twitter last night. If someone told me we were going to sign a striker in late January and he would get us 8 goals, I would be certain we'd be staying up. But yeah, he got the 8 goals and we didn't win a single game that he scored in. He got 5 points. 5 points in those games. So, it just says everything about our defence and the setup that even when we got a striker who got us goals, it wasn't good enough.
Salek at the end of Saturday was interesting. I don't know if any of you there saw. He was the last one to leave from in front of the away fans at the end of the game. He was clapping us for quite some time, and I thought to myself, "Oh no, he's not saying goodbye, is he?" But then of course he beat his badge before he walked away, and then the quote from him afterwards: "We will be back. Hopefully he'll be here next season."
Yeah. What I was interested was with Salek. There was 2 things that stood out to me, and like Vince has said there, I suppose is let's look at his attitude first and foremost. What people have lacked this year. Someone in January has come in, and he's when we conceded the second and third goal the other day, he was running to get the ball and get up the halfway line, and he was telling the players, "Come on." He was the one trying to drive it, rally the troops, so to say, and he was the one really, really trying to get something going. Callum Doyle thought he'd had him in his pocket. He was laughing at him and mugging him off like in the box. So it shows testimony to his character that he thought, well, I'll have you back. And he did. And he skinned him up and got the penalty. And he had the last laugh with that, I think. At the end, it was quite poignant, I think. He even told Alex Robertson to do the Ayatollah. Like Alex Robertson stood there in this, again, I know we've been relegated and stuff. He stood there with his head down. And you could see Salek was like, no, you do it. Little things like this go a long way with fans. He set the tone. He's there for an hour after the game speaking to fans, and and he's always approachable. I think if we do let him go, just because we've gone down to League One, it doesn't mean we sell him on the cheap at the end of the day. Hopefully there's no relegation clause. But this is a guy, like you said, in half a season has scored 8 goals in the worst team in the league. Imagine what he'd do if he was in a top 6, let's say a Coventry sort of thing. He'd be worth 25, 30 million. Let's be brutally honest, because I think he's got, like you said, he's young and he's hungry. And this is a guy that's only just, come over to the UK to play in this league, which is, an unforgiving league for a lot of foreign strikers. So again, if we keep him, fantastic. It might be our Jay Stansfield like Birmingham have had, but if we don't, then we're going to hope we have to find a gem like him to march us get back up there.
Yeah, we struck gold with Yousef Salek, if he does stick around, he's got a fantastic attitude. He'd be a massive asset for us. Which leads me on to the final question for the season, really, which we'll just spin around. We'll start with you, Nige, and then we'll work our way around. Where are we going to finish next season, Nige?
Ask me a question again in about 2 months' time, Steve. I think it really all hinges on what goes on in the next few weeks, and my hopes aren't particularly high that Tam will change too much. I mean, you read the statement. He's on about we're recruiting for a manager. There's no hint that he's going to change the structure, which is that's what has to change. But in theory, if they hang on to the nucleus of that squad, the young players, they're going to be playoffs at least, I would say. But it all depends on who they bring in as well. They've got to bring in 4 or 5 very capable players.
Okay. And one of them is a keeper, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Jamie, where are we going to finish next season?
Minimum playoffs. I think we have to. There's no ifs, no buts about it. If we're really serious about getting up to where we should be, we need to show some ambition and we need to change things quite importantly, because otherwise I think, dare I say, if we went back up, we'd run that risk again, wouldn't we, of almost, coming back down. But yeah, like Nigel said there, decisions in the next however many days and weeks are important. Ramsey said himself, act now, get it all sorted, because pre-season will be fast approaching.
Okay, Steve?
To pick up what Nigel said there, I think if it's got to be minimum playoffs for what Jamie said as well. If we keep Salek, we build a team around him, bet on us going up, not on us going down.
Okay, and Vince?
Yeah, like the other, we should be, forget playoffs, we should be top 2. That's the size of club we are. We should be top 2. I don't care what anyone says. They can say, oh, well, the thing. And with the right appointments and the nucleus of the team, we'll finish top 2. If we carry on the way we're going, we'd be lucky to finish halfway. And that's just a fact of it, because there's where we got, if you put a structure in place with the nucleus of this side, there's no reason why we don't win our league. No reason whatsoever with Salek up front. No reason. Absolutely none whatsoever. People like Tanner, Colwell, Ashford, they'd be outstanding. Lawler, they'd be outstanding in that division. They're miles above anything to say. I watched a few games this season, and most of them were ponderous. The games were very. I watched Birmingham and Blackpool the other evening, and Birmingham looked twice as quick as Blackpool, but I would have fancied our chances against Birmingham. I got to be honest. The way they played, I would have. But we just with our players playing properly. But yeah, it just depends. It's massive. But yeah, there's no reason why we can't finish top if we get keep the nucleus, get a couple in, and the right managerial appointment. If we don't, if we carry on as we go, we'll be halfway.
Okay, so at that point, we'll end the show, and Nigel's point about 2 months still resonates in my head, so we'll see where we go with that. We're a massive couple of months ahead of us.
Yeah.
Well done, all of you, for being amazing supporters of Cardiff City, despite everything. Let's hope we come back fighting and we're successful next season.
Yeah.
Have
a good summer, everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.